set in the 23rd century where mankind has colonized the solar system. Originally released as a Sci-Fi Channel original series, based off of a series of novels by the same name, receiving critical acclaim across the board, including an 8.4 on IMDb, which is next to impossible, and 90% on Rotten Tomatoes, becoming a New York Times bestseller and winning the Hugo Award for Best Novel Series in 2014, winner of Best Sound Editing in its first season, nominated for Best Science Fiction Series 4 years in a row, and wrongfully canceled by its own network, leading to one of the biggest fan outcries since the cancellation of Mystery Science Theater 3000, leading to it being picked up by an entirely new network. My name is Hunter, and today we're having a look at The Expanse. Hello, my name is Hunter, the movie reviewing pony, because when it comes to cinema, humans cannot be trusted. Even though I'm not reviewing anything cinema related, and the fact that we still don't have a TV format for this show. And maybe, just maybe, one of these Octobers we'll be able to review a Halloween movie, but not this time. Straight from the world of increasingly complex pen names, introducing James S.A. Corey. Thought up by a guy named Frank, spelled with a C and a K, and Abraham. The first and last names are taken from these two's middle names, respectively, and the S.A. are the initials of Abraham's daughter. Everybody got that? Okay. Everybody confused? So am I. Don't worry. What's important here is Frank was the personal assistant of George R.R. Martin. Yes, that George R.R. Martin. But this isn't about him. These two got together, came up with this incredibly complicated pen name, and then wrote a book called Leviathan Wakes, which was received extremely well, being nominated for a Hugo Award for Best Novel. It didn't win, though. Some book called Among Others soundly beat it. It didn't stop them, though. Just over a year later, they released a sequel called Caliban's War. It's worth noting, too, these are not short books. They're really long. The shortest one in the series is Book 3, which is still 539 pages. Speaking of which, they wrote a third book, Abaddon's Gate. And I mean, things were going pretty good for these two. I mean, people liked these books. It was also around this time that they were allowed to write a Star Wars novel, Honor Among Thieves. All the while, they're still writing a fourth book, and around this time, Sci-Fi approached them about making a TV show. Mark Fergus and Hawk Otsby were brought in, two screenwriters best known for their work on Children of Men and Iron Man. And today, we're gonna see what they were able to come up with. I, for one, am very excited, so let's not waste any time. Let's have a look around some doors and corners with The Expanse. First off, a little history. This whole thing was originally intended to be an MMO. Something to compete with the likes of Elite Dangerous or even EVE Online, a game that is infinitely more interesting to read about than it is to actually play. Unfortunately, it turns out making an MMO is really expensive. And if the Star Citizen Kickstarter is anything to go by, the amount of money they raised isn't enough either. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to justify charging hundreds of dollars for in-game ships. Oh, that felt good. I've been wanting to take a jab at Star Citizen for years. Writing books is unquestionably cheaper. That's not a jab at people who write books, it's just unquestionably cheaper to write a book than to make a video game. And books being adapted to TV or film are pretty much best friends at this point, unlike video games being adapted to TV or movies, which is just notoriously bad all the time. And these books have a lot of source material. The longest one is 600 pages long. And the other ones come really close. The first one is 592 pages. The shortest one of these is Book 3, which is still 539 pages. There's a lot of stuff to work with here, not to mention a whole bunch of side stories. So, April 2014, Sci-Fi Channel scooped up the rights for a 10-episode-long first season. Screenwriters Mark Fergus and Hawk Ostby were brought in to develop the series, and we picked up a cast of Thomas Jane, Stephen Strait, Cass Varn, Dominique Tipper, Wes Chapman, Paulo Costello. Okay, who are half of these people? You, who are you? I'm not even gonna try to pronounce your name. I'm still getting over the Mary Jo Pehl mispronunciation. And I'm still not entirely sure how to pronounce Trace Beaulieu. Alcon Entertainment were chosen for the production company of this, and they're more known for movies, honestly. This was actually their first TV show. Anyway, finally, over a year later, on December 14th, 2015, the first episode finally aired. Warning. I'm about to spoil pretty much every single major plot point of the Expanse TV series. If you want to go into this series without any spoilers, it's highly recommended that you stop watching the video now. However, if you don't care about spoilers, what the hell's wrong with you? You definitely should care. Critique of this series starts with its opening sequence. As previously stated, The Expanse takes place hundreds of years in the future after mankind has colonized the solar system. But this opening seems to go beyond that. It hints at the rising sea levels on Earth, it gives us a glimpse as to how that colonization actually panned out, and we had this sequence on episode 1, which really helps paint a general setting. Not everyone came into this series after reading the books, myself included. It helps paint a clearer backstory as to exactly how all this stuff came to be, even through the minimalistic style that this opening seems to take. Even then, after that, we have a whole load of text to help explain things that are currently going on. So for the first season, the series kinda stars this guy, except it doesn't star this guy. Mostly it stars these guys and their spaceship that they stole.
Whoa, hold on there, darling. That's a legitimate salvage.
The other guy's looking for this girl, and this girl runs into this blue stuff that makes everything go all crazy. Certain key members of the government want this blue stuff to make weapons, but not her because she's awesome. There's been all this talk about strong, independent women in TV and movies, and for some reason they don't talk about her. She's Deputy Undersecretary for the UN, and she is ruthless. Sometimes almost to the point that she's evil. Earth isn't the only planet involved in this, though. There's also Mars, who at this point in history have gained their independence from Earth and are more technologically advanced in every way. Now, they want to get to terraforming Mars, but Mars and Earth are at each other's throats right now. Season 3, this comes to a head, but we'll get to that. Finally, we have the Belt, or specifically the OPA, the Outer Planets Alliance, which isn't really an organized group. For the most part, it's made up of a bunch of terrorist cells. All the good parts are kinda run by this guy, Anderson Dawes. Now, he's working to unify the Belt under one OPA banner. Trouble is, he's working out of Tycho Station when everyone else is over in Ceres Station. Mostly because Ceres Station is the largest station in the asteroid belt. Good portion of the first season takes place here, and then we never see it again. This is mostly where Miller, who is the guy, is trying to find Julie, which is the girl from the first scene. But she wound up running with a bad crowd, specifically the bad part of the OPA, so she could be anywhere. But before the show gets too deep into that, we have to go over to the ice trawler Canterbury and introduce our main characters. But not before we recreate the box art from Dead Space. And it's here we get to meet our main cast, and a million side characters, except we're not going to explore any of them because we have to investigate a distress signal. It's a great big giant trap, and then the ship blows up. And then, everything starts falling into place. Riots start breaking out on Ceres Station because water is important. A stealth ship was used to blow up the Canterbury, and Mars is apparently the only one who can use stealth ships because all their ship designs are apparently based off of Elon Musk's pickup truck. Mars says they didn't do it. Belt says they did. Everyone is shouting, "Remember the cat." Earth is over in their happy little corner of the solar system wondering what the fuck is going on. And somewhere in this mess, our main cast gets picked up by a great big Martian warship, which also gets attacked by these stealth ships and explodes. But not before our main cast commandeer an onboard gunship corvette. Spearheading our amazing cast of characters. They need this guy to be in charge of everything. They need Amos to be Amos. They need a medic to go in and die immediately. They need someone to fly the ship, and they need Naomi because I don't know, she's the only one who knows how the engine works. And this all happens in just the first 3 episodes. And at this point, the crazy hasn't even kicked off yet. But things sort of start coming together. Remember Miller and how he was trying to find Julie? Well, he dug too deep and got fired for some reason. The other 4, who stole the spaceship, renamed it the Rocinante, and ended up at Tycho Station and Anderson Dawes. And now he wants them to find Julie. Because Julie's extremely important. Or at least her dad is. Julie Mao is the daughter of Jules Pierre Mao, who's like, I don't know, I think he runs this great big pharmaceutical company or something like that. Big company. So you can imagine the controversy that kicks up when the daughter of this very big important guy is running with terrorist groups. Also take into account, we're jumping between all of these stories in like small segments. The books did this in the same way. Everyone is easy enough to follow at least. Maybe the politics are a little bit worse. Mostly because politics are inherently difficult to follow. Seriously, it's like they invented a fucking language. There also might be a Belter language. I'm not entirely sure. Because the only guy in the series that was actually trying to learn the Belter language got stabbed with a harpoon! But he's alright. But then Miller leaves series and then we never see him again. By the way, Miller did not leave the series as in he left the show. He left series as in the dwarf planet in the asteroid belt. This is a real thing, look it up. In fact, pretty much every single asteroid and moon and dwarf planet in this series, they exist. Unlike other sci-fi shows out there, The Expanse is very much grounded in reality. In a sense, at least. You still have your MacGuffin space engine that allows people to travel all across the solar system. But even other than that, The Expanse usually does a pretty good job of explaining its science. Even orbital mechanics are very much grounded in reality. If you've ever sat in on one of our Kerbal Space Program episodes over on Headhunter Gaming, that's about what we're dealing with here. I can really appreciate this. In fact, one of my favorite scenes from the show is when the pilot, Alex, is trying to gravity sling his way around about 10 moons.
No engine, just thrusters. Said it was gonna be easy.
And the show doesn't just stop at the science, it also has the effects to back it up. In fact, I would argue that this has some of the best visual effects for a Sci-Fi Channel series. I wasn't too tremendously impressed by Killjoys, and Stargate SG-1 ended 12 years ago. I mean, other than that, I don't have much to compare it to. At least, not on the Sci-Fi Channel, that I can think of. Who seriously watches this channel anymore? What's even weirder for this being a Sci-Fi Channel original is that it also has the acting to back it up. Even if some of these people are people I've never heard of prior to watching this series. Steven Strait, our protagonist, is an actor, model, and singer, according to Wikipedia. Wait. He sings? Cass Anvar is probably the funnest member of the cast, though. There's a 24-minute video of him going around the set with a smartphone. It's awesome that we get to see behind the scenes like this. There's also Paulo Costanzo, who dies after 3 episodes. Like, seriously, no one saw that coming! We have Sean Doyle playing Ernright, the UN Undersecretary of Executive Administration. Yeah, that's a job you made up. Of course, we have the previously mentioned Sheree Ash... Oh, fuck you, I'm not even gonna try. Frankie Adams comes in Season 2, she's a goddamn space marine, and she's awesome! There are more, but this list is 1.5 miles long. So it's got the effects, it's got the acting, and it's got the science, but it also follows the books really, really closely. This show is, for all intents and purposes, a book adaptation. And as of it finishing its run on Sci-Fi, they're on book 3. And given that these are extremely good books, then yeah, they also have story. Admittedly, I never did read the first 3 books. Actually, I started listening to them. Disclaimer, we are not sponsored by Audible, because if we were sponsored by Audible, every other review, I'd be recommending all the books. And like I said before, the books like to jump around, even when these groups of characters actually meet up. Because it turns out they're both looking for Julie, but Julie got infected with the blue stuff, which subsequently infected the entirety of an asteroid base. Main cast escapes, that's where the season ends. That's not where the book ended, though. Because now we have an entire asteroid, basically the size of a town, that is infected with blue stuff, which Jules Pierre Mao invented? Kinda. He's the one studying the damn thing. He found it on Phoebe, which is an extrasolar object captured by Saturn. Which means it came from... not here. We run into this guy who explains that aliens basically threw it at the solar system. Pretty sure it was supposed to hit Earth, but it got caught in Saturn's gravity, which Saturn has a lot of gravity. Not only that, but we also get one of, if not the best space battle I have seen in sci-fi history. All the effects are great, the science is right, the acting backs up the tension, it's beautiful. Honestly, these space battles are some of the show's best moments. This is the first time the show handles a close-quarter space battle, and it's fantastic. But ultimately, this doesn't lead to anything involving a cure, so we go to plan B, which is to naturally take a giant generation ship you have parked outside and ram the thing. Which, knowing the special effects in this show, would have been beautiful. The Nauvoo is one of my favorite plot devices in the series. Like, it started as a generation ship that was being built by the Mormon Church. Now it's a battering ram being used to push an asteroid into the sun. But unfortunately, for literally our entire cast, Protomolecule does not obey the laws of physics and just moves itself out of the way. Now it's on a collision course with Earth, because it has determined Earth to be a threat. Protomolecule is either semi-intelligent or it's goddamn sentient. Worth noting, Eros, which is the station it's infected, is a planet-killer-sized asteroid. So this is a doomsday scenario. Earth fires missiles, Eros moving too fast to get a target. Main cast says we'll do it and nearly kills themselves in the process. And then Miller says, let me talk to it. So he talks to it. He just talks to it. Basically, Julie is flying the asteroid. There are several nuances to racing, but he manages to convince her to go to Venus instead, and we all raise a glass to him for saving the world. And that is where the first book ended, but this was not where the season ended. Book 2. It turns out there's more protomolecule and it's being used to create protomolecule human hybrids that are now being marketed as weapons. Our main character, James Holden, swears with a vengeance to destroy all of them as the war between Earth and Mars finally comes to a head and everybody starts shooting at one another. This guy turns into the biggest piece of shit in the show because it turns out him and Jules Pierre Mao are working together. The Space Marine I have failed to mention often, but who is actually a very major character, defects to Earth. She's working with Avasarala. They're both branded as traitors by him. Meanwhile, the other guy is experimenting with children. Oh! Good. Because Kappa isn't going to screw me over enough already. Most of the stuff I mentioned actually happens in Season 3. The second half of the second season is mostly build-up. It's great, it's really great, but we had to wait an entire year until we got a new season. Season 3 was the absolute high point of the series. At the time, I would argue it was the most critically acclaimed thing on TV with an astounding 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. That never happens. The writing here was fantastic, and the effects and acting backed it up 1000%. The antagonists here breathe hatred. These are characters that you will love to hate. That's hard to do with me. The last antagonist I truly hated was... Okay, well, it was the bitch from Rising of the Shield Hero, but besides that, the last time... Okay, it was what's-his-face from Call of Duty Infinite Warfare. But unlike Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, this time Mars actually has decent reasons to go to war.
Convene the Security Council. I want a formal declaration of war.
Unrelated, but I'm really proud of that burn back there. Here's a list of burn centers in America, even though this series I think is shot in Canada. Anyway, things are getting a little crazy now. Everybody's shooting at each other, and Earnwright is responsible. I probably wouldn't hate him so much if he wasn't flip-flopping all over the place. At one point, he was going to confess everything, but then he just decided to double down on being a jackass. Deciding that these new protomolecule hybrids are going to be the super weapon to end the war, because they're basically super soldiers. Also, Naomi did some crap and we hate her now. I can't give you every plot point. Look, this guy. Who's this guy? Why is he on the ship and why does he sound like Adam Jensen?
Dipped my fingers a little too deep in Fred Johnson's cookie jar. I had to get off of Tycho before his OPA leg breakers scooped me up.
Or this guy, Prax, who is actually in this season. What's he doing here? Also, he's a botanist, and we all saw The Martian, so we know that botanists are the most powerful super beings in the universe. Okay, he's actually along for the ride for his own personal reasons, but he's honestly a really good character. Maybe a bit of a pushover, but by the end of the book, he gets better. Speaking of the end of the book, everybody finally stops fighting. Prax's story gets wrapped up in one of the most thank God moments I have ever witnessed. Naomi leaves the crew, Earnwright is arrested for treason, and our old friend who was experimenting on children is literally forced to kneel before Avasarala. And everything gets wrapped up real nice. Before we find out that the protomolecule did not in fact die on Venus and is now heading towards the outer rim of the solar system.
What the fuck is that?
This was the show's way of setting up what they were going to cover in the series' third book. But in the meantime, there was another problem. May 11th, 2018, Sci-Fi announced that they were not going to purchase the rights for future seasons of the series, subsequently announcing that the series was over. Alcon Entertainment, one of the production companies, started looking for another network to pick the show up, but the fans had another idea. They weren't going to take this lying down, so the movement began. Hashtag Save the Expanse. In the meantime, the second half of Season 3 kicked off with the protomolecule turning into a giant ring. This was the show's interpretation of the book Abaddon's Gate, the shortest book in the series. The Rocinante's back and they're in the middle of a legal battle to get ownership of their ship. The Nauvoo has gone from being a battering ram to being a battleship. Earth and Mars are best friends, Draper is back to being a Marine, and Avasarala now runs the Earth. So everyone decides that they're gonna go out and they're gonna study the ring. And then this one jackass goes out there and rams into it. And look, James is here too. Well, they're still doing the documentary on the guy. And there's also this new girl here who wants to murder him. Because it turns out Julie had a sister we just didn't talk about until now, and she wants vengeance for what's happened to her family. Also, Miller is back, sort of. He's like a ghost that only James can see. It's proto-molecule stuff. Again, proto-molecule does not play by the rules. Holden gets framed for blowing up a science ship, and Miller tells him to go through the ring. So he does. Eventually everybody does, but right now Miller's talking to Holden, and he wants him to put his hand in a thing, but when he does, stuff starts happening. I'm not entirely clear what's going on in the story right now. Basically, they have to prove that they're not a threat to this thing, or it's going to destroy everything. And everyone. Because it has the power to make the sun explode, apparently! Naturally, things aren't going very well. Things weren't looking too good in efforts to save the show, either. There was a ton of fan outcry to save this show, myself included. Sci-Fi even proposed an ultimatum that if enough people watched it, they would consider renewing it. Ultimately, this went nowhere. There was a petition with over 100,000 signatures, but this also didn't go anywhere either. Right now, the fan base was lobbying two different companies, Amazon and Netflix, both of which would have been ideal candidates to pick the show up. Finally, things started coming to a head when a GoFundMe page gathered enough money to fly an airplane over Amazon headquarters with the banner #SaveTheExpanse. This finally got people to start paying attention. Fans were dedicated to getting this show back. And apparently it got somebody's attention because 2 weeks after Sci-Fi announced the cancellation, Jeff Bezos himself had this to say.
I was telling them that we were working hard at Amazon to save the Expanse, but it wasn't a done deal yet. And during dinner, 10 minutes ago, I just got word that the Expanse is saved.
2 weeks after Sci-Fi canceled it, Amazon picked it up for a 4th season as an Amazon Prime original. Things were looking better in the show, too. They finally figured out that to keep the proto-molecule from blowing everybody up, they had to turn everything off. Which, given that this worm wormed his way into worming around and being in charge of everything, that was rather difficult. But they pull this off, and then it turns out that instead of one ring, there's a lot of rings. This thing is a MacGuffin, and it's basically a ring network, linking to thousands of inhabitable planets. And the season ends with the question of, who built the ring networks? What wiped them out? And what's to stop what wiped them out from wiping us out? Also, Naomi's back on the Rocinante again. And that's all 3 seasons. Or at least the most important parts. I didn't even get to half of what goes on in this show. Fact is, there's just too much going on in this show to cover in a single review. Or at least not one that doesn't run for an hour or 2. And given that we already have a huge review in the works for next year, I really don't have time to sit down and go over every single thing. So I guess the main question is, where do we go from here? All 3 seasons of The Expanse are now available on Amazon Prime Video, and as of this review going live on December 13th, Season 4 is now out. I don't really know what to expect with Season 4. As of finishing up this review, I never actually finished the book. The same cast, writing, and production company is still on with the show, so all I can really do is go into this new season expecting great things. I don't know about everybody else, but I'm ready for 10 more seasons of this show covering all the books. And the fan base for this show is stronger than ever. Recently, a Kickstarter wrapped up with almost $500,000 to create a 21-inch Rocinante model. And as a whole, this show is amazing, and it is beyond underrated. I feel that not enough people know about this show, and everyone that I actually convinced to watch the show really enjoys it. That's what I'm hoping to accomplish with this review. As it stands, The Expanse is cleared to run for another 2 seasons, but why should we stop there? Consider heading over to Amazon and supporting this show. Buy 1 episode, or if you have a Prime subscription, watch the series. In my opinion, good shows are getting harder and harder to come by these days, especially with all the good stuff getting canceled. And this is one of the good ones. I have never seen a fan base fight so hard to revive a show since Mystery Science Theater 3000. Ironically, another series that's sci-fi almost doomed for eternity. And much like that show, this show kicks ass. We brought back Mystery Science Theater, and we brought back The Expanse. I don't mean to brag, but I think we're on a roll here. My name is Hunter, and this has been a Hunter Review. Hey, thanks. Thanks for sticking around to the end. Worked super hard on this review. I always wanted to do an Expanse review. Anyway, earlier in this review, I said we weren't sponsored by Audible. Well, we do have a sponsor, and if you could consider going to said sponsor, it would be extremely helpful. There's a link down in the description for greenmangaming.com. It's our official referral link. You just go to that link, buy something, and we get a little bit of your purchase money. These guys aren't like G2A. They get their codes directly from the game developers themselves. You can redeem them on Steam, the Epic Games Store, the Bethesda launcher, whatever the game is available on. They got really great deals, so head down to the description, check out what they have on sale right now. You'd be doing us a huge favor. Also, consider supporting Headhunter Productions on Patreon. That link is down there as well. $1 a month gets you access to some videos, including this one. Consider heading to one of those 2 links. Of course, if you decide not to, we always appreciate your viewership. Thank you guys so much for watching. Here's some credits, and remember the cant.
Remember the Canterbury, killed by an unknown adversary. We won't forget this anonymous threat. Remember the Canterbury. They were bound for Ceres with 1,000,000 tons of ice. They locked a distress call and diverted their flight. A group of 5 to the Scapula to take a look inside. They found no survivors, but they sure were surprised.
And as of it finishing its run on... I hate you. I hate you so much.